Hey guys, what's up? Unrested here with JFAQ, Japan's frequently asked questions, fielding a question I kind of touch on randomly within multiple videos on my channel, but one I think I've never really directly answered, and that is, can I work so-and-so job within Japan? And I'm talking about every single job outside of teaching English. I'm also taking every single job outside of working on a military base. A lot of times when I say this, I say, to work a J job in Japan for a Japanese company, you need to be able to speak fluent Japanese, be able to read it, be able to grammatically write things correctly. And people are like, that's not true, Scott. I know a friend who works IT on a military base. That's a military base. That's America. That's owned by America. That's built by America. That has Americans in it. They speak English. And that's its own little tiny bubble. I'm not including that, okay? So please don't throw that into the comments. Say like, you're wrong about that. I have a friend who... Okay, we understand. We got it. We got it. You got your friend who works on a military... I have friends who work on military bases too. Yes, they don't have to speak Japanese very often. I mean, once in a great while. But, you know, I even have friends who worked at like Pizza Hut on a military base in Japan. And of course, all their customers spoke English. They only spoke English to get their customers' orders. And they never had to learn any Japanese at all the entire time that they were in Japan. Totally different situation, not really Japan, okay? We're talking about Japan. We're talking outside of military bases. We're talking outside of English teaching, which you also really don't ever need to learn Japanese unless you're getting into like ALT jobs, which that's its own video. I've made videos about that. If you want to do that, go look up getting a job, get an English teaching job in Japan videos. I've got tons of those on this channel. Go look at those. This is outside of that. I'm talking about the people who write me and say, Scott, I want to do anime, I want to do manga, I want to make games, I want to be a software developer, I want to do IT, I want to do localization, which the funny thing is a lot of people tell me, they're like, you know what I'd really like to do? I'd like to do voice acting, or I'd like to do translating for games. I'm like, oh, like localization. And then they say, what's localization? That shows like a complete lack of research. And it's like, if this is really your goal in life, research, research, research. I can't really take a lot of people seriously when they come at me and they're like, "Yo, what college should I go to in Japan?" It's like, what are you looking to do? What's your major? Like, what kind of college programs are you hoping to have? I don't know yet. I'm still in high school. I haven't really thought about what I want to do in college. Like, think about what you want to even do. Like, what do you want to major in? What kind of college program are you looking for? Like, what do you need to make yourself the top of your career, or to give your career a name when you get in there that will be something great looking on your resume? Yeah, you could go to a college in Japan, but if that college in Japan doesn't even have the program that you want to major in, then why are you going here? Is it just to go to, if you just want to come to Japan and go to school, just do a language school. Maybe you learn the Japanese language here. You don't even have to go to college for that. You don't even have to have a degree. You don't even have to, I think you don't even have to have like a high school GED or a high school diploma to do that. I think you could even take a summer and enroll. I think maybe you have to be like a legal adult. Maybe that's what it is. Or you at least have to have a guardian sign for you. But come on. Do a little bit of research. If you're really serious about your future goals in a career within Japan, do your research. That's the number one thing I'm going to hit you up with. Then I get the people who say, well, Sky, you know, like I've already studied some Japanese. Of course, I know you got to have some Japanese study to work at a Japanese company, you know. But like, how much English can I speak when I'm there? And it's like, well, unless you're only working in some sort of very specialized Japanese company that has a very specialized English department where they only do special English stuff, probably almost never. Most times you're gonna have to come into a Japanese company and only speak Japanese. I mean, think about your own country. How many jobs could you fly over to your country and speak Japanese for? If it's an English-speaking country, I mean, probably not a lot. There's probably not a lot of jobs that you could like wedge your way in by being like, well, look, guys, I don't speak English, but my Japanese is a native level. I mean, that would be a very, very special, select few jobs maybe within your country. And within there, the people who say that they have studied, that their conversational level, they've passed things like JLPT5, um, that's still not enough. That's not enough. to actually get a job at a Japanese company. To get a job and work for a Japanese company, you need to be near native. I mean, you at least need to speak with correct grammar, probably even know some of the local tongue if there is some sort of like local dialect. That will help you out a lot if you want to teach within a specific area. Okinawa has its own dialect. Kansai has its own dialect. They are the same language. That's what after I say this, like that they have their own dialect, people are like, well, what language do they speak in Kansai? And it's like, well, Kansai Ben is still Japanese. It just sometimes uses different suffixes and prefixes on the words that slightly alter or change them. And sometimes there's other loan words and switch words, which, you know, for example, instead of always saying arigato for thank you, sometimes people here say okini, or sometimes they say maido, which is like thank you every time. Okay, it doesn't change the language. It doesn't make a new language. It's not such a dialect that it completely alters everything, that if someone from Tokyo came to Osaka, they'd be like, what are these people saying? Like, it's, you know, they would still understand everything. Maybe once in a while they'd hit up a word and be like, oh, I never heard that before. That's about it. That's about it. So, okay, if you come here and you only know, you know, the straight up Japanese that you've learned from reading a couple books, probably not going to be enough. I think also people don't take into account that if you've never actually spoken the language before, coming here with just a bunch of books that you've read is still not enough to come anywhere close to fluency in a language. I guess this just comes from a state of inexperience of ever being in a country where there's absolutely no English spoken, which is often the situation in Japan. I mean, aside from Tokyo, you can get away with English quite a bit more, but any other part of Japan, for example, even Osaka, where I live, where it's still a very big international city, there's not a lot of English spoken. You wouldn't really get away with a lot of English. And I think this really surprises people. They come here and they're like, yo, I read all these books. Like, I even read, like, the different responses people would have. But if you haven't heard actual Japanese being spoken and these actual different responses being said, you're going to come here and still be very confused. It's not going to bring you anywhere near the level that you need to be at to even interview to get a job in Japan. And also, you've read books, and that's great. It means you have actually done some work to come here, and I applaud you for that. But even the responses that they have in those books for the different questions that you can ask and how to say them are not the giant multitude of answers that you could ever possibly get, okay? And also, a lot of times these books only teach keigo, and a lot of people don't even understand that keigo is a polite business form of the Japanese language, which is still the same Japanese with, again, different suffixes that make it more polite in a business setting, but it isn't often spoke every day at the office or on the street. When you get down to a peer level at the office, they're not constantly speaking keigo to each other. They're not ending everything with mas and des. And if you're at a point where you're just now figuring that out, you're nowhere close to getting a job in Japan. You're nowhere close to it, okay? You got to think about how fluent would someone need to be in your own language to be able to easily get a job there in your country, and the same applies to Japan. If you could understand every single thing everybody ever said, that's great. I can understand a lot more than I can speak at this point. But I'd still say I would have a bit of a struggle in a Japanese interview because there would be business-specific words that I still wouldn't know. Even if I went into a field that I'm very, very familiar with. For example, if I went in to draw manga, I think I'm a pretty decent artist. I've worked as an artist for a while now myself, doing commissions for people outside of Japan. But if I went into a meeting and tried to get an interview and, for example, the word chiaroscuro, or chiaroscuro, depending on how you want to pronounce it, everybody corrects it differently, is a word within art that is effectively about shadow, things slowly disappearing into shadow. I wouldn't know what the translation of that word is in Japanese. Or perhaps the vanishing point on a horizon. You draw something and it slowly vanishes as it gets farther and farther away. It's very, very simple concept of art, but I wouldn't really know how to explain that properly in Japanese because that situation just never comes up, and I don't speak it enough every single day to know that. Of course, I could talk about, anything, any movie I've ever seen, any video game I've ever played, TV shows that are on Japan all the time. I could talk endlessly about that in Japanese. That's not helpful in an interview. And I think that's what I really want to get across is that before you even ask, can I work so and so job in Japan outside of English teaching? Once again, we're not talking about English here, not talking about working on a military base, not talking about even working within like an English company, like sometimes in Tokyo, and this is again a very specific situation, which I wish people would understand. There's hotels that are business hotels that come to Japan and have their, I guess, chain of stores here, chain of hotels or whatever you want to call it, that have, customer service that is totally 100% in English, and businessmen come to those because they constantly have business trips in Japan that only speak English. Again, that's a very, very small bubble. Go to the countryside in Japan, you're not going to find any damn hotel that's speaking English. So, again, sticking within very, very strict Japanese-esque, Japanese-only nationalistic companies within Japan, started by Japanese people with Japanese CEOs. Japanese is only going to be spoken there. Even if you're going to do something like localization, which again, a lot of people who say I want to do translation for video games don't realize that that is localization, meaningly you're probably not going to get the job if you don't even know that small word. They're going to still need to speak Japanese to their boss. They're still going to need to speak Japanese to whoever the owner of that company is. They're still going to need to be speaking Japanese to any peer outside of the department that they are in for localization. Maybe the other Japanese people you work with within a localization section of a video game, TV show, movie translation company can speak some English, but you could never expect the rest of the company to, because it's just not important to them. It's not needed for them. It's not a necessity. It's not a utility. It doesn't improve the quality of their life. Why would they need to learn it? So, again, the very first question you need to ask yourself before you ask me, can you work so-and-so job within Japan, is number one, can you speak Japanese on a native or nearly native level? Can you read it on a native or nearly native level? Can you grammatically write and say things on a native or nearly native level? If the answer to any of those are no, sorry, I'm not trying to kill any dreams here. I think you probably have a chance to get your foot in the door with just about anything you want to try and do within Japan, but the more directly and 100% Japanese that job is, the more you're going to have to speak, say, read, write, and even act, to a certain extent, Japanese. And that's just a fact of life. It would be a fact of life if I came to your country as a Japanese person speaking only Japanese. I would have to ask myself again, can I speak enough English to understand the locals? If the answer is no, then I'd probably have a lot of trouble getting a job outside of a very low-paying job. It's sad but true, okay? It's not discrimination, it's communication, okay? And it's just a blatant fact about Japan. So, again, before you even hit me up with those questions, can I get into that field of work? I have tons of people who write me about, I want to do anime, I want to do manga, I want to do video games, and I don't want to say no. I don't want to say no, shoot that dream down. No, that's impossible, you idiot. You've never studied a little tiny bit of Japanese even, or the books you have studied are Japanese for Dummies and Japanese Survival Guide. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, look, why don't you do this? Get your foot in the door by just even getting the correct visa to get over here. If you're not from America, look into the working holiday visa, okay? If your country offers that, come over here on that. If you're from America, it's going to be a little bit harder. You need to get either a working visa, or you need to get maybe a spouse visa or some other type of visa. I don't know exactly which your options are at this point. Everything's changed a lot since I've come to Japan with visas. Student visa maybe even. And get your foot into a language school. And some of these language schools have an accreditation that says if you pass this, you can take this, it's not a diploma, it's not a degree, a certificate, there we go, that's what I'm looking for, to a Japanese job, and they will hire you because they'll see your Japanese level came from this school, which is well known. For example, a school right next to me here in Tennoji has that accreditation. I know plenty of people who've gotten their certificate from there and gotten jobs as everything from real estate agents to working in a pizza place making pizzas. And they do it 100% in Japanese all the time. and they went to that school to do that. They did the work, they put in the time, they learned the language, they speak better than me, way better than me, probably been here way shorter time, maybe only 2 or 3 years, and already far more grammatically correct with everything they say. And kudos to them, and congrats to them. They put in the work, the time, and the effort, and they knew that that's what they had to do. They knew that that was the first step before they applied to any of these jobs. And that's all I'm saying to you, is you got to put in that first step. You got to put in that first step of learning the language, speaking the language. I would say even learning how to act a little bit Japanese. There's certain things you just can't do here that you do in the American workplace. I'm not saying they're wrong, I'm not saying they're bad, I'm just saying they are different, okay? Those are the things you need to understand first before you even get into the whole, I want to come here and just do that. I understand your excitement, I applaud your enthusiasm, but at the same time, my channel is all about the real picture and what you can actually do. Until next time, I'm unrested with the questions you requested. This is JFAQ, Japan's frequently asked questions. Have a good one.